Hungarian Folk Tales. Only donkeys don't eat the spoon. Once upon a time, beyond the snowy Alps, in the cradle of the Carpathian Mountains, lay the land of Hungary, and there lived a king called Matthias. If the old stories are to be believed, then King Matthias liked to see for himself how his people lived. He dressed in the clothes of a simple beggar and wandered the land, where he spoke to his people as their equal. One day he found himself on a vast plain, where all he could see was the small house of a shepherd. So King Matthias approached the house and greeted the good shepherd. It was the middle of winter, so the shepherd invited the king into his home. The shepherd had no idea that this poor beggar was actually the king of the land. He gave him food for his journey, and the king carved his host's name on his stick before he returned to his royal palace. The shepherd had a trusty black sheepdog. The little dog was so skilled and loyal that it never left the shepherd's feet. King Matthias sent a letter to the shepherd inviting him and his trusty sheepdog to the palace. But the invitation did not explain why he was invited or how to find the king's home. So the shepherd made himself look smart, took his crook in his hand, and set off for the king's royal palace, with his sheepdog by his side. When they reached the city gate, they were met by a guard who said, "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "And with a dog?" "But of course," the shepherd replied. "Here you are. You can see the royal letter that invites us both." The guard read the letter from top to bottom. "Oh, old man, you are sure to be richly rewarded by the king. I shall let you pass if you promise to share the great reward with me." "Well, I don't mind. I promise you that half of the reward will be yours." Then the shepherd reached the castle gate. He tried to enter, but was again stopped by a guard. "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "With a dog?" "Well, I have a letter. Here you are." "You were right. You are both invited." But then the guard remembered that there was a banquet inside the palace. The king had called together all the important men in his kingdom. The king obviously wanted to reward the lowly shepherd in front of these rich men, but also planned to play a joke on the old man first. The second guard said, "Old man, you are going to get a great reward. I shall let you pass if you give me half of that reward." "All right, I will give you half of it." So he would give one half to this one, and he had promised to give the other half to the other one, so that would leave him with nothing, wouldn't it? The old shepherd walked into the palace. The king and his courtiers were already seated around the large table. The servants had set places for them all with a bowl, spoon, knife and a fork in front of everyone except the shepherd, who had been given no spoon. The soup was served and everyone helped himself. The first, of course, was His Majesty King Matthias, who raised his spoon and said, "Dear sirs, only donkeys don't eat soup." Everyone took his spoon. The shepherd tried to take his one too, but he had none. "Oh dear, I shall be the donkey now because I cannot eat my soup. I cannot eat soup with either a fork or a knife." But this was not the first time that a poor man had to eat soup without a spoon. The old shepherd simply cut the end off his bread and hollowed it out. The crispy crust made the perfect spoon for eating soup, and he sat and ate every last drop, watched by all the important guests and the king. "Your Majesty said that only donkeys don't eat soup. Well, let me add that only donkeys don't eat their spoon." And the old shepherd gobbled up his soup-soaked spoon in one. The banquet eventually ended and the time came for the king to hand out rewards. And you will never believe what the old shepherd asked for. Your Majesty, I would like 50 strokes of the stick. Shepherd, I haven't invited you to beat you 50 times with a stick. I wanted to play a practical joke on you, but you played the joke on me. Therefore, you deserve more than 50 strokes. Tell me now what I owe you. Your Majesty, you owe me nothing more than 50 strokes. That's all I want. Then the king understood that it had been a joke again. Very well then, but tell me now why. Why? The reason is very simple. On my way here I was stopped by a guard at the city gate who refused to let me in unless he could share half of my reward. Then a second guard only let me enter the palace if he too could receive half of my reward. So now one will receive 25 strokes of the stick, and so will the second. And so the shepherd's joke was ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. Bees on the Train. Once upon a time there was a large farm, and on that farm lived a man who had relatives from another village who came to visit him one day. They did not want to arrive empty-handed, so they brought him a gift of honey. The honey was quickly eaten with big chunks of fresh bread and was soon all gone. But while they sat eating, they discussed what a fine thing it was to keep bees and how simple it was with such rich rewards. The man could hardly wait for the next farm gathering where he suggested they should buy bees to make honey. The head farmer agreed and asked if there was anyone willing to work with bees. A man stood up and said he knew all there was to know about bees. He also told them that he knew where to buy bees if that was what they wanted, and everyone cheered with joy. They worked out how much money to give the man, and he set off to buy bees for the farm. He bought as many hives as he could put on a train. Then he had the whole car covered in red cloth and had red clothes and a red hat made to wear. He soon made friends with the bees and spoke to them. He opened the door and the bees came and went as they pleased. When they were halfway back to the farm, the train drove into a sidetrack and the engine left. So the man asked the station master, "Why has the engine gone?" "Because," the station master said, "it was ordered to leave." "How long will the train be in the station?" "Who am I to know that?" "Don't talk to me like that, kind sir, because if I know that the train will be staying here for a whole day long, then I will let my bees out so they can have some air and food." "The train will remain for at least 3 days more," the station master told him. The beekeeper went out and opened up the hives. Come out, children, and have some air. Find food for yourselves and return to your hives in time for the sunset." The bees had barely left when suddenly the station master had an order to start the train again. The beekeeper saw from the top of the carriage that the engine was coming and the train was hooked up, and they sat waiting for the station master's signal to start. The beekeeper ran to complain. "What is all of this? You never told me about this, station master, but I received an order to start the train. But that's impossible. My bees are still in the field. They cost a fortune." "What am I to do with your bees?" the station master replied. "I am a station master and not a beekeeper." "Well, at least leave the carriage with the bees here in the station so it can be coupled up with another train tomorrow." "That's impossible." And with these words, he started the train, which left the station with the bees' carriage. The beekeeper also left in his red clothes. While most of the bees were busy gathering honey, they sent a small party back to see if all was safe with their carriage in the station. Well, when they arrived, they saw that the train had taken their hives away. They returned to the meadow and told the others that their carriage had vanished. So all of the bees flew back to the station, and when they arrived, they found people waiting for a passenger train. Well, the bees thought that these people had stolen their hives, and so they stung them and stung them. The people cried out for help. The station master heard their calls, so he rushed out of his office, and he too was attacked by the angry swarm. His wife heard his cries and opened the window to see what was wrong. And as she opened the window, the bees rushed in and stung her so badly that she cried louder than all the rest. The station master heard this, and he ran upstairs to find out what had happened to his wife. And then he saw that the whole room was filled with bees. The two of them had to hide under a blanket to save their skins, but both were badly stung and their faces sadly swollen. The people waiting for the train all ran back to their homes, but the swarm of bees flew after them. The other villagers heard their shouts and ran out into the street. "Help! The village is being attacked by bees!" And they rang the big bell. The station master eventually came to his senses, and he called for the train to be sent back to the station, and it soon reappeared on the platform. The beekeeper, still dressed all in red, climbed on top of the carriage and started to call the bees back. "Come on, children, your hives are here." The bees, hearing their master's voice, gathered together and flew back in an orderly fashion. Those that had survived the bloody battle made their way quietly back into their hives. Then the beekeeper went to see the station master, but he could hardly recognize him. "You deserved whatever happened because you spoke to me so rudely." But the beekeeper eventually forgave the station master, and the beekeeper went back to the farm and laughed when he recalled what had happened that day. The bees soon started to make honey on the farm and made more money than all the farmers and animals put together. From then on, life on the farm was sweet. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Little Walnut. Once upon a time, there lived a poor man who had so many children they were like ants in a hill. The children often went without food for 3 days in a row. They were so very poor. So their father set off to find some food for his family. He was walking in the forest when the devil met him, disguised as a man. "Where are you going, poor man?" "I'm going to find some food for my children. If I don't do something soon, they will all die of hunger." "Don't take another step. I'll give you something that, if you use it wisely, will put an end to suffering in your house. Here, take this little walnut. Give it any order you like, and it will be done without delay." "But what am I to give you in return?" "I don't want anything much. Only the thing you don't know about in your home." The poor man started thinking what it could be that he didn't know about, but he could not think of a single thing. And as times were hard, he gave his promise. The poor man arrived home with a little walnut, and his wife asked, "Have you brought food?" "We are all so very, very hungry." "Well, I didn't exactly bring food, but I did bring a peculiar nut. The man who gave it to me said that we can order it to do anything we desire, and it will be done. Why did he give it to you?" "I'm sure he wanted something in return. All he said was that I am to give him what I don't know about in my home in return for the nut." "Oh, you faithless fool, what have you done? You can see that I'm expecting a baby, and you didn't know about it, and now you have given it away. It's not my fault, wife, but what is done is done." The poor man gave an order to the walnut. "Well, little nut, all of us need food, drink, and clothes. I order you to make them now." And everything the man asked for was provided, and they all sat down to eat finer food than they had ever tasted in their lives before. The poor man also wanted a larger home, and so he ordered the little walnut to build him a large brick farmhouse with green gardens, lush pastures, and fine farm animals. The poor man soon became a rich man, and his baby was born. The family were all working hard one day when two old men arrived and asked for shelter for the night. He was glad to help and also gave them food when they told him why they had come. "We know that the devil is about to come and take your youngest child. We came to help you save your innocent babe. Do as we say and put a loaf of bread on your table at night and let it stay there until the following day." So the man put a loaf on the table, and everyone in the house went to sleep for the night. They were all fast asleep at midnight when the devil appeared under the window and shouted up, "Hey, master of the house, do you hear me? Do you remember your promise to me? Give it to me now. I came for that." Nobody heard his words as they were all sleeping, but instead the bread spoke up. "Stay and sit easy outside. Just wait as I waited. Be patient and suffer as I patiently waited. I was sown in the soil in the autumn and sat there all winter, as you must wait now. When spring came, I started to grow, and I waited to grow tall, as you must wait now too. When the time of harvest came, I was cut with a scythe and gathered in bunches, but I had to suffer, as you must now suffer too. Then I was put on a cart, pushed along a road and into the village and waited, as you must wait now too. I was stamped on and painfully cracked. I had to suffer, as you must now suffer too. I was shoveled into a barn where they beat me with sticks. They beat me hard and I suffered, as you must suffer now too. Then I was put in a sack, taken to the mill and poured between two heavy stones and ground to powder. I had to suffer, as you must suffer now too. I was taken home and put into a bowl with salt and water. Then they punched me with their fists, kneaded me and tortured me. Then, greatest of all pains in the world, they pushed me into a fiery oven. I had to suffer all of this, so you must suffer now too. They baked me and burned me before I was brought here, and cut me with a sharp metal knife. I had to be patient and suffer and wait. Now you must be patient and suffer and wait now too. The devil was sad to hear the sound of the cockerel heralding the dawn of the next day. He had no power over men in the bright light of morning, so he ran back to his distant home, and the farmer's family kept their youngest son. The farmer thanked the old men for saving his baby boy from the devil's grasp. And that poor farmer still lives a wealthy life, unless they have lost their little walnut.